Here we go. So,
Hey,
welcome.
thank you.
Welcome to the Martin Talk Show. This episode is part of the Amplifying the Voices of Harlow series, as supported by Harlow Council. And so today I'm joined by Jokey Poyntz. Poyntz.
Yep.
Sorry, Jokey. So you're a team member, a teen vicar of the St Mary's Little Pardon Church.
Yeah, and the town centre parishes. So St Paul's in the town centre and St Mary's Little Pardon. And I have a half-time community role as well.
Wonderful, which we'll get into in just a
Yeah.
moment. And we're also joined by James Griggs, leader of Harlow Labour Group,
Great.
and many
Afternoon.
other community things as well.
One of my hats.
One of your many hats. So one of the big things that I invited you both on here for today is your current mission that you're driving forward, the two of you that I see throughout the town, the more in common than that which divides us message.
Yeah.
Let's should we get in straight into it?
Go for it.
We're in a time at the moment where there does seem to be a lot of division. There does seem to be a lot of separation. There seems to be, unfortunately, a lot of hate out there in the world. But then I look at the work that you two are doing and the communities that you're involved in, and I see a lot of love and I see a lot of togetherness. Tell me a little bit about how you see things at the moment.
I think one of the things we have in common is that through James's work in the food bank, through my work in the community and the church, we come across all and every sort of person, don't we?
Indeed.
And I think our starting point is, well, mine is God loves everybody. We should love everybody. Your starting point, James, for that would be slightly different.
Well, it's there is love for everybody. I mean,
Yeah.
we cover the complete spectrum because obviously Jokey comes at it from from God and the church angle. I'm a devout atheist, so we're absolutely.
I'm not sure that's trending. We're working on that one. I'm not going to let you get away with that one.
But well, let's say I have no faith that I've got recognised at the moment. Let's go with that.
Okay.
It
Sounds like you're in a space of
do.
discovery, maybe, James.
Well, I'm in a space of Jokey hasn't given up hope.
Dragging
on me.
along, kicking and screaming.
But I don't think that. I think that
I think
actually strengthens what we do
Yeah.
because
we
we come
have
at
in
it from
common
totally.
that
Yeah.
we care about people, don't we?
Yes.
We want the best for people, and all people in Harlow, regardless of anything, really.
Yeah.
And with a particular heart, I think. For me, it's a sort of biblical imperative that you look out for the people who are less fortunate than you or who are struggling in any way. But not only, you look out for everybody, but that we have that in common as well, don't we? So James
Indeed.
is also manager of the food bank, and run by Michael Roberts Charitable Trust, of which I'm a trustee. So we have a crossover there as well, don't we?
We do. Yeah, I think there was just so much that we can do in terms of the communities are out there. Harlow is like the United Nations. You go and search for a nationality, and you will find one. You'll find a representation of that nationality across the town. And I think the current let's blame everybody that isn't white British. And I know there are far more people out there that don't subscribe to that line of thinking than those that do. Unfortunately, the ones that do have a very big mouth. And I'm not saying big voice. No, they've just got big mouths and they shout off a lot of things and they're just angry. And we were discussing this on the way here. And they're angry about all manner of things. And we understand why some of them are angry. They have been neglected for years. For decades, you might say that there are people that have been neglected. So they want someone to shout at and to be angry at, and rather than take it out and deal with it with the people that are actually responsible, that we believe are responsible for the problems, they're just picking somebody that's easy to attack, a group of people that is easy to attack. And while I've got breath in my body, I will not sit aside and let that happen. I will call it out. And that's why we've sort of really, it's something that I've always been doing. I mean, but it just feels like there's more of an imperative about it at the moment, that we have to speak up, because there is just so much anger and hatred and vilification that's going on. And by no means is it as bad in Harlow as it is in other places. This is a tolerant town. It's got, there are the elements that are problematic, and will just seek to blame everybody else for whatever is going on. But they're blaming the wrong people, as far as we're concerned.
So who are the people that we should be looking at? Who is it? Those people that are saying, I feel like it's that community over there that have done me wrong. I feel like these people have come and taken over my country. These are not my words. These are words that I've heard. And if they're looking to point the finger to those communities, who should they be asking questions to? Who should they be looking at instead?
Well,
it's complicated,
how political do you want us to get on this, Martin? Because
I'm just kind of trying to find some
It
answers
is
to
very
this that are
complex, and
helpful.
I think, going back to, where we were discussing on the way here, the kind of the roots of it, I think I personally do have a lot of sympathy with people who feel like, for example, they lived in Harlow all their lives and their children can't get homes in Harlow and things like that. There is a lot of things wrong. I mean, it's difficult because you can't blame any one simple thing, but I think successive governments have not done what they should have done in respect of housing. And I think there has been a kind of a sort of neglect of, I don't really like using the term white working class or any of these blanket sort of terms, but there has been a neglect of whole tranches of society that have, created this landscape and this feeling where people quite rightly have felt, actually nobody cares about us. And I think there's a rightness to that. But like James has said, they're sort of picking on the wrong people to blame because they're being manipulated by people who actually don't really care about them at all. And the same thing is happening in America, isn't it? That people's anger, even if the anger is for the right reasons, they're then being exploited by, people like Reform and in America, Donald Trump and so on and so forth. And it just makes me very sad that they can't see that they're being, given a load of misinformation. And then you look at the other side where, for example, in my congregations, I have loads of people, because we're town centre, who've worked in the hospitals or retired hospital workers who are just amazing and are doing phenomenal work. And lots of them have lived here all their lives. And if they weren't born in Harlow, their children were born. I mean, I wasn't born in Harlow. My daughter was born in Harlow. Who is a Harlow person, But I've always found it to be a town that's been welcoming and lovely mixed communities and all the rest of it. So I hope, like James says, that we're not really, as in such a difficult place as some. But, you see those people and you have people speaking to you who are frightened to come out of their houses or frightened even at work, when I know that people get, for example, racially abused at work already, and then something like this happens, and, when you're even a bit scared to go out of your house. And those are just, hard-working people that live in Harlow just same as everyone else. And then you get the people who really are asylum seekers and refugees. And, we have a number of Christians in our church who are asylum seekers because of their faith, because they're being persecuted because of their faith in the country they come from. And you see them being frightened or vilified, and you get to know them as people, and you think these are amazing people, and they're really hardworking. They're volunteering for everything. If they're not allowed to work, them offering you
They
help.
want to be part of this community. They want to, from what you see, they want to. There's people out there that have come here
Yeah.
and they want to be part of this
And
community.
of course, you get bad apples in every walk
every
of life and
society,
every
yeah.
society. There are going to be some who might be criminals or might be, exploiting the system or whatever. But that isn't the majority. And, it's been a privilege getting to know people, getting to know the agencies that work like integration support and things, and James even more than I at Food Bank and at MRCT. They're amazing, and they're such lovely, lovely people, and I just find it really sad that some of them are feeling very frightened and very beleaguered, and I think that's the irony as well, is that both groups of people are scared
Yes.
for different reasons.
So
and
who does that
actually-
benefit where the whole of society is scared?
Yeah.
Who is that good for?
Farage.
Exploiting.
As an
Exploitation.
individual or as
Well, I'm not.
the collective that he's part of?
I'm not entirely convinced that organisation, that business, because let's call it what it is, it's a business, that part, it's not a political party, it is a corporation. I don't think that would survive if he wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you've got to, in some ways.
Well, where did UKIP go?
Well, yeah, he got the ump with them.
Mm-hmm.
It vanished off the face of the earth.
Yes,
but now it's
and that's happening a lot in
been,
as a political person. That happens a lot in politics, and
does.
we've seen it in America with Trump.
Yeah,
you don't talk about the Democratic Party; they just talk about Trump, don't they? It becomes almost about the person, the person at the top. Yeah, that personality.
And I really don't know what his end game is. Mm-hmm. What Farage's end game is. He's got his acolytes who are all sitting around there making a damn nuisance of themselves, being, in many cases, utterly vile to people. And they're getting away with it. They're all emboldened at the moment. Some of the worst people that he's got around him are currently really emboldened by their rise. Mm-hmm. They're totally unfit for a lot of what they've actually been elected to do. I mean, I cannot think of another situation in politics where so many people who were elected less than 6 months or so back are now, they're all quitting. You know, when as a party lost so many councillors and council leaders in such a short space of time, it's bonkers. It's because I think a lot of them thought, oh yeah, this is good, we can get up there and fight, and good for them. You know, that's what democracy is about, is actually standing up and saying, yes, I want to do this. Mm-hmm. But then when they get in there and realise that they actually...
There's some work to be done.
There is some work to be done, and you are accountable. Mm-hmm. You know, you are accountable for what you say or what you do or what you don't do, yeah, and they're finding it hard. And it can be, you know, I mean, I don't expect everybody that's in my ward in this town to agree with me. It'd be pretty extraordinary if they did, you know. But even if I don't agree with them, the job is to listen to them and see what, you know. We may have to part on terms of we're just going to have to respectfully agree to disagree. But you don't get that with reform. It's either it's our way or it's not at all. And so the person that is benefiting the most out of this is Farage, because, you know, and if he says he's not, then get off that soapbox and show us your tax return, like all the other leaders have said they'll do. He's not going to do that anytime soon, that's for sure, because he's a weasel. You know, and you've got some of his friends, like Mr. Tice, you know, his deputy leader, banging on about how great this country is and all the rest of it. Where does he live? Dubai. He's based in Dubai. So that's really patriotic, isn't it? So I get really angry about all that crap that you hear from them about their patriotism. So I don't know what his end game is. I don't know what he wants. I really don't. Well, and if he wanted a completely...
It's just really upsetting for people. I had a lady in my church the other day when I was saying about the flags, and she came up to me after and she said, oh, but should I not like the flag then? Because... You know,
it raises a really interesting question.
Yeah, this is really, it's making me really furious, because normally I would fly a flag for the Lionesses, and I would fly a flag for the, you know, the rugby, women's rugby and all that. But now we're all put in the thing where we're thinking, I don't dare put a flag out because people will think I'm, National Front, or I'm, the equivalent, that I'm a racist, or and that really annoys me, because it's like, there's nothing wrong with being patriotic. I think everybody, you look at any football, like the World Cup, and everybody will have their flag. Someone was helping me put a bunting up the other day because he was nice and tall. So I accosted this passing man and said, "Can you help me put this bunting up?"
No one's safe.
And then
you're grabbing.
No, totally not. And then he's putting it up for me, and he went, "Hey, my flag, Brazil!" And we both kind of went, "Yay!" And that's great. When you have something like the World Cup or the Olympics, we all remember 2012. It's lovely.
It brings us, the flag tends to bring us together.
Everyone flying their flags, all the different countries and everybody, and that's lovely. There's nothing wrong with that. But now it's like that's been taken away from us, because it's this sort of aggressive flagging of, it's a sort of not in my name thing, isn't it? And that makes me really, really cross. And, it's one of the reasons why with the community colours thing, I think we both had the same thought at the same time. It was one of those, again, I'd say it was a God incident. James wouldn't say that, but and it was great. The timing of that was great. And I've had, several people say, I drive through the town and I feel really depressed looking at all these flags, which is sad, because part of me, when they first went up and it was sunny and they were all shiny, and part of you thinks it's lovely to see, the flag up. If it had been a World Cup or something, you'd think, oh, isn't that great?
A time for coming together.
Exactly.
But this is being used in a moment of division.
It makes you feel a bit scared. It makes you feel like, who's behind it? What are they trying to say? People who are intimidated by it, who feel like they're being told, we don't want you. And so we wanted to do something to counteract that. And I've had several people say, we come round the corner by the Playhouse and our hearts lift because we see all the different flags and all the different colours. And, there are Union flags and there's the England flag in amongst those flags. But, why not all be proud of wherever it is we come from? There's nothing wrong with that, but it feels like the sort of nice and harmless sort of patriotism has been hijacked.
And I wonder who hijacked it. Where did it come from? Where did this moment start? Because I feel like I woke up one day and they were there. And they weren't there the day before. And it spread throughout the entirety of the United Kingdom, hasn't it?
And it's a really good point, because they did it kind of happened in, click your fingers and it's there. So just turn that back a moment and think, the person that came up with the idea of doing that, and they caused it raise the colours, is the phrase that was used. It was the hashtag that went viral very, very quickly. And the country went bonkers, and suddenly they're up all over the place. Now, and as Jokey was saying, the issue with flags is not being unpatriotic. That's just another slur to throw at people for caring about how other people might feel. But it's like currently the flag, the English flag and the Union flag have been weaponised, and they'll go, "Oh, you're making it, or you're just pandering to whatever." And I've had that, but if I've got people from across our communities of all colours, including white, telling me that they feel it's intimidating and it's threatening, then are they wrong? Are they? You can't tell. Nobody has the right to tell somebody else you don't feel threatened or intimidated by. If they say they do, then they do. It's as simple as that. But just turn it on its head for a second. The person that had that thought and used that power that they appear to have had to do that, just think what a difference that person could have made if they'd actually used it for something constructive and community-minded, and talking about bringing people together and sort of celebrating their towns and their communities and the diversity of each of those. There's a line that I've used a few times, and I've heard it elsewhere as well. And I just think, like all the stuff we saw going on in Epping, which is a town I know very well. I was born.
Yes, and this was worldwide news. It's
gone everywhere.
It's gone global.
A couple of people. I was been in Liverpool at the Labour Party conference over the last few days, and the number of people there say, "Where are you from?" and they say, "Oh, Harlow," and they go, "Oh, that's near Epping, isn't it?" We know, Epping's on the map, but for reasons that it certainly doesn't want to be. Epping is my hometown. I was there for the first years of my life.
Yep.
I came to Harlow 25 years ago, so this is my home now, and I'm very proud to be here. But I said, just after all that fuss and all that the rioting, when it did get to the stage, I'd call it rioting, and the disorder and the antisocial behaviour.
Well,
and all the rest of it.
It got violent. It wasn't just a protest. It wasn't just people saying that they were concerned. People got violent, and people travelled to Epping for the violence.
That's the thing. I mean, you can have every sympathy with people being alarmed at what happened, and like we said, there are going to be some criminal elements in any big group of people, aren't there? And nobody's saying, you can understand why people would have been alarmed by that story, but it's keeping it in proportion, isn't it? It suddenly becomes everyone is a rapist or everyone's a, whatever, criminal. And also then, but when you talk to the residents, both of, in the hotel and the residents who live in the area, that a lot of the people that come in are not Epping people. They're not, they're coming in from outside. They're causing trouble. They're behaving in a really antisocial manner to, I was just hearing this week about somewhere where their people are peeing in their gardens and, being drunk and disorderly and all. They're not Epping people doing that.
No.
They're people that have come in just to make trouble, and jump on the bandwagon. But that is being orchestrated and manipulated, that's pretty sinister. No one is saying there are not faults in the system. There are huge faults in the system for all sorts of complicated reasons, which we would take 3 hours if we tried to even start with that whole subject. So, yes, of course there are issues and there are problems that need to be sorted out for everybody in the whole, immigration, wherever they are in the system. There are issues with it, so it needs dealing with. But this kind of, it's just this sort of, I feel like it has been manipulated, and this movement can't really have happened overnight, if you see what I mean. No. There was obviously planning and people pulling strings, to make it all happen that fast, and and the rallies and so on,
and the finances behind it. Where did they're not cheap to buy a flag, are they?
No, that's right. So that's the
well,
bit that's
depends where you
alarming.
get them from.
Oh, really?
and there's just there's hypocrisy in so much of this that's going on at the moment. So the bit I was going to say is, at the end of all this, the riotous behaviour in Epping or elsewhere across the country, all complaining about it's all about immigrants and it's people that aren't white are the problem. How many of them on their way home from their nice evenings protesting pop in and grab themselves a kebab? Oh, would that be Turkish or Greek? No. Or a Chinese takeaway, or pop in the curry house or whatever. It's a just arrant hypocrisy of the whole thing. And then you see people like, and I'm going to, it isn't entirely, it would be easy for me to sit here as a Labour politician to say, this is all the fault of the Tories, blah, blah, blah. They got 1,001 things wrong in their 14 years in power, for sure. Does Labour ever get everything totally right? Of course it doesn't. Nobody ever does. But one thing that just rattled me, that really, really did get to me in the Epping situation, was seeing Rev'd Jokey Poyntz, a Conservative MP, previous minister at the Home Office, standing outside the Bell complaining about hotels being used to house asylum seekers. Who was it that started the programme of using hotels to house asylum seekers? That would be one Rev'd Jokey Poyntz. So I will call him out as just the biggest troublemaking hypocrite that can possibly walk on this planet at the moment. I could use a lot of other words, but you wouldn't be able to broadcast them. But
I think it's more important.
Hypocrisy is outrageous, and it's just disgusting to see somebody using a situation to I mean, it's perfectly clear that he's determined to try and oust Kemi Badenoch and become the next Tory leader. So but to use a situation that he is responsible for creating in the first place, to try and feed off the back of it, just makes my blood boil. But it is that utter hypocrisy of the whole thing. It just is disgusting.
So tell me, we could go deeper into that,
Yeah.
the disgustingness of politics in general. Like
Yeah.
I say, that's one where we could be here for all day. But I want to hear more about what you're both doing to bring people now back together. The country has been divided, people are divided, communities are separating. There is this fear, but I see you both working hard to stop that fear, to bring back the love. Tell me a little bit about it.
And I think there's just an absolute determination on our part to give a platform. Yeah, and here's the problem: all the haters and the ones that want to stir up trouble have a platform because they've got a big voice and they shout and scream, and people hear it. But it doesn't mean there's a lot of them. But they're making a lot of noise.
The volume has been turned up.
They are making a hell of a lot of noise, and they've got the backing of the likes of Farage. And I don't want to keep talking about him because it'll make me feel sick. But there is a platform there at the moment, and they can all jump around that and on it and make a lot of noise. But they in the end, they turn out to be a very small group of people. The problem, and I don't blame anybody for this, but the problem is that the vast majority are the silent majority that don't approve of all of this stuff going on. They're not interested in going out and attacking people on a daily basis, in vilifying their neighbours and sending them, they all need to go home. This is their home. They're here, and it is home, and they should all be made to feel welcome. So it's creating, what we're doing is trying to create a platform that says, it is safe for you to come and join us and show that you actually care about your wider community, and you embrace the diversity of your communities, and come and join us. Come and do something positive that isn't a big shouty, screamy affair. You can just come along like we did. The walk weekend before last. It was a really nice. Thankfully, the sun was out. It was a nice little walk around the town. We ended up back at the church. We put more ribbons. More people came and tied ribbons on the wall there, which is just a blaze of colour now. And came in, and there was tea and cake because everybody brought something to share. And it was just one of those nice little things. And how very British is that? That at the end of doing something like that, we'll have
tea and
cake now.
Yeah,
But the variety of nationalities represented in that hall at the end of that walk was incredible. And they're also embracing that very British thing to do because they're here. But we'll equally, how many of us have never been and would never embrace any other form of culture in the country? It's like, oh no, it's pie and mash, it's meat and two veg, blah blah blah. It's just everything comes down to food in the end because it's the thing that brings everyone together. It's the nicest and the simplest way of getting people together is just having food, sharing food, and talking, and learning about people over that process. So that's the basis.
And it's
of
also,
where we're
the
at.
thing of as well with the church, because it is the town centre church, because our congregation is very mixed culturally, and it was, because you're thinking of, well, I'll go and tie a ribbon on a railing, but then I'm vandalising public property as well. So from my point of view, I was thinking, what can we do in the church? Well, actually, the church, it's our church, so we're allowed to tie things to it as long as we don't bang holes in it or whatever. We can, put what we like on it within reason. And so, my initial thought is let's put flags up. And then you said about the ribbons and the community colours and everything. And I thought, yeah, that's great. We can do that. We've got the space on the walls. Nobody can complain that we're, vandalising railings or whatever. So there's also that kind of practical side to it, but that demonstration that both inside and out, the church is full and is open to and is a place of welcome to, I hope, all and every kind of people. But also Harlow has always been that. I mean, you think of the origins of Harlow. I'm sure the people who lived in the villages before Harlow was built were threatened by the thought of all these Londoners coming in and, you know, what's going to happen to our village and all that. But out of that, and the thing I've loved about Harlow and the Gibbard vision for it, you know, was that it was like a little community, it was replicated the village, the best of a village thing, that you have, you know, your own little area, you've got your playground, you've got your little amenities and stuff, you've got your neighbours. And I mean, when I do funerals for older people in Harlow and they talk about when they first came to the town, how everybody mucked in because they were all new together, and, you know, that spirit of sort of community. And I've always thought that's great in Harlow. And then each new sort of group of people that's arrived from anywhere, I felt like they've just been sort of absorbed and added to and increased and made more interesting the whole town. And I mean, at the end of the day, it's about valuing people who want to do something positive. And of course, I understand people being afraid, and we should all be afraid of people who are criminal or do bad things. Nobody wants those people, but that's in every community. It's not anything to do with your skin colour or, you know, it's possibly to do with life experience and what the, you know, but that's a whole nother psychological.
What would you say to those that are concerned about the communities mixing and the cultures mixing? And I hear some people say that our cultures can't mix. Is there a truth to that at all?
I would say that the only reason they can't mix is if you don't have the will to try and think about it and discover what another culture has, that you can learn from it and embrace it. I mean, you know, if you actually think of it, you know, there is no such thing really as white British. We're all, you know, they say Anglo-Saxon. Well, okay, so that's French, Danish. It's madness.
I wonder if that's who we are as human beings.
Yeah.
Is it not? You know, we're a mix of cultures.
Well, people are all doing these DNA things, you know, and you find you're sort of, you know, a quarter this and a tenth that, and, you know, what is this thing about? And, you know, the usual stuff about St. George was Turkish and, you know, all this kind of thing. It's like, yeah, I mean, it's a complicated thing, isn't it? Because you will find amongst sort of expat communities anywhere in the world, there's an element to which if you're taken away from your home country that you you hold on to it. And you can see that, and everybody does it. And actually, probably the British are worse at it than lots of other communities. And, you know, you desperately hold on to stuff, and you find that often communities are holding on to something that's gone out of date in their country, you know, 50 years ago or something, because, I don't know, when you're taken away from your roots, you and I get that, and, you know, that's okay. But I think the people that flourish in any community, wherever they've moved to in the world, are the people that try to get to know people, try to learn the language, try to embrace the values, so on and so forth. You'll just get on better in that community, won't you? If you know, it's like, just from a practical point of view, if, you know, I remember once being on holiday, and I think it was in the Canaries somewhere, and I was speaking to a lady in the hairdressers, and she'd said, she had this lady who was crying, and, you know, she was talking to me about, she said, her husband died, and she doesn't really speak Spanish, and now she's got to organise repatriating a body. And you think of those things, you know, and the whole, or you try and buy a house somewhere, you know, learning English is one thing, learning Spanish or learning any language, but you try and do the specialist terms, legal terms, medical terms, it's really difficult. So, you know, there's a kind of practical good reason for why people should learn the language of whichever country they go into. But apart from that, I think it's just being a good citizen, isn't it? And I found that, you know, Harlow, over the years that I've known it, has been a great place for that, and a great place for just we all kind of muck in together and do things. And so it just makes you cross when people try to make divisions where there aren't any, or where people that you've known for years and have lived in the town for years are suddenly frightened to come out of their door because their skin isn't white. And you think, that's terrible. That is just, it shouldn't be like that. And I think the majority of people wouldn't be like that. But equally, you know, I think people, I don't want people to think we don't understand their fears, because I think the fears are very real and should be talked about, in the sense that, not saying that they're fearful about an accurate thing, but where the fear is coming from is real. Do you see what I mean? It's
look for the roots of the fear. Look for where it's and who's driving the fear.
Can we talk about actually the reality of the situation and bring some truth into it? You know, when you're thinking sort of everyone in the Bell Hotel is a rapist or something. No. You know, other people going, oh, there are women. No, there aren't women. You know, there's lots of inaccuracies going around that are being, some of them are just, you know, human error, but some of them are people deliberately creating inaccuracies in order to inflame
they're stirring the pot,
division and panic. And that's just, it's not good. And we want to stand up against that. So it's sort of a simple thing. Let's just, you know, wrap the church in flags of as many countries as we can, you know, get hold of, and put the ribbons up, you know, somewhere where we're not contributing to public vandalism. and you know, have it, and because it's in the middle of town, people see it, it's a kind of a witness, it's an easy place to gather people around. And, you know, so I think it's just to make a stand, to say, no, we don't want this to happen here or anywhere else for that matter. We want to say, and I think the majority of people in Harlow are welcoming and are, you know, very happy to kind of work with and live amongst, you know, whoever. It's about getting to know your neighbours, getting to know your workmates, building relationship. You know, we can all be suspicious of one another until we get to know one another as people, can't we? And then, you know, you think, oh, well, hang on, we've got all this in common. Or, you know, food, you're right about the food as well. I mean, food is a great, you know, whenever we have a bring and share at St Paul's, you're going to get amazing food, you know, from all over the place. And it's wonderful, you know, so, yeah.
Food brings out storytelling in people, doesn't it? It brings out connection. It's funny talking about food, because I went to see a play last night in London, and it was called My English Persian Kitchen. And it was 70 minutes long. And in that 70 minutes, a one-woman show, she cooked a dish, an Iranian dish, in 70 minutes. And she cooked it live there on stage. Oh, and you could smell the smells as she told her story of where she came from. And she shared that dish at the end of the show as well. And all the audience came out of the seats, over 150 people came out of their seats onto the stage. And we all stood there talking and communicating with each other about this story that we just watched, all talking with strangers. And it was something about the food, I think, that did that.
Absolutely.
Well, it's something that is common to every culture, isn't it? It doesn't matter where you're from. We all eat. We all have to eat.
Yes.
But and that sort of social thing of coming together and eating. There's not a country. You know, I've been fortunate and been, you know, around a lot of the world, and in every country, it's food that gets the conversations going. You know, be that on a train in India or on a boat down the Yangtze in China or whatever. You know, the food is there, and it comes out every time. It's just incredible because it's exciting, it's interesting, you know, and it's essential. We need it. You know? So what better way to bring people together and try and do that? So, you know, we've going to have to come up with some more ideas that involve food.
Yeah.
You know,
well, we have been talking about with various people for ages about doing a big kind of food festival, celebrating all the different food from
different cultures,
different cultures, which is really, you know, and it is. I mean, I've got a brilliant confirmation class that's been going on where the majority are Persian or from Iran, Christians who've fled often because of their faith, and then we have a whole mixture of people, but there's quite a big group. And we started talking about food the other day, and because we're going to share some food together after we've done the rehearsal, and and suddenly we were all really hungry. It was like, but it was actually lovely to hear them talking about food. And I can remember years and years, it must be probably 20 or more years ago now, hearing on the radio about a work with people who were victims of torture from all around the world, and anybody that had been a victim of torture. And some of them were so traumatized they couldn't even speak. And so they started doing a thing around bread, or about, every culture has, if not a bread, something like a pancake, or something that's sort of flour or grain based mixed with water at its most simple level. So everyone could relate to that. And so they then got people to start making whatever, their national thing was. And there was also a real, it worked on so many levels, because it was taking them back to happy memories of their childhood, or their grandmothers, or whoever who used to make whatever it was. Also, by making something, they suddenly felt valued, because there's that thing of, if you're an asylum seeker, you can't, you're not allowed to work. That's really hard for people. And they felt so proud and pleased with themselves that they'd made something and they could share it with people. So there was that sense of achievement. But just in that simple act of making some kind of a bread, grain-based, whatever, potato, whatever thing it was, just brought out so many things in people, and took them back. And the ones who hadn't been able to speak, could speak about that, because it took them back to a place before all the pain and the thing that they'd gone through. And it was really wonderful, and I've never forgotten that. And, I've known there's a church, I think it was in Liverpool, that started a bread church on that same basis of, actually it's very therapeutic, and actually bashing a bit of dough is good for anger management as well.
I should have gone there last weekend.
You should try that, Joe. We'll get you on the bread making. But, isn't that powerful? And just that simple thing of making food together and sharing food together. And even today, I went with a lovely South Indian lady to a new restaurant in Harlow, and now I'm trying all this food that I hadn't tried before, and it was lovely. So, yeah, it's a good way in, and a good thing. I think you need to think of, actually, what have we got in common as human beings?
Finding those common grounds.
Lot, isn't there?
You're both really getting me thinking about this. You're really getting my brain working, because I see this as there's a problem in society with immigration, with integration, with there's an air around this subject that all of our problems come down to immigration, and it even is becoming popular. It's becoming this thing we hear on the news recently. Reform is going to be the next leaders of the UK, and so all the other political parties are going, oh, how can we be more like them? Yeah. Seems to be the answer. Whereas I feel there needs to be a shift away from less of that hate and move more towards the kindness and compassion. And I think you're giving great examples of where we can find that.
I was just remembering now, there's a Chinese the Chinese community school thing down in Commonside Road that's been there for donkey's years. And I think you put me onto it. They every now and again they do like a cookery class thing. And
I've made a
couple of years ago, I think it was, and I took my little grandson, I think he was like barely 4 then, thinking, I'll probably spend the whole time out in the play park with him. But they made, what was it, a chicken and sweet corn soup, which is one of my favourite things, Chinese anyway, and these little dumplings. And he absolutely loved it. And old Mr. Man, who was there demonstrating, so he was so good with little Noah. I think he was there were other children there, but I think he was the littlest one. And it was so lovely, and everybody got really into, they pre-prepared a lot of it so we could do it easily. But it was such a lovely day, and he still remembers it. And then we went on, not so much the dumplings because they're a bit more complicated, but the soup we've made loads of times since it's become like a sort of family favourite thing to do. But that whole day, that was really, for me, that exemplified a lot of what I've loved about Harlow, is places like that, or, you know, all the different communities do celebrations around food, don't they?
Yes,
But, you know, that was you could just see everyone, and there were lots of different nationalities there, all just getting stuck in learning to make this food. And it's it's a lovely thing, isn't it? And just to come together over something. And I think we can all find common ground with people. And so, you know, that's a good place to start, isn't it? Instead of looking for divisions and fear and, you know, you don't want anyone to feel you've got some white British people thinking, I can't go out because I might get attacked by somebody, you know, and equally you've got people who are immigrants feeling, I can't go out because I might be attacked by somebody. And we don't want that, you know, we don't want that in our society, and we don't want it here in a town that I've always felt has been, as I say, a place of welcome to new people, not one that, you know, is afraid of everybody.
Yeah.
I think that is essentially our main message, isn't it? Is just don't be afraid. You know, there are people out there that will yell at you, that will blame you for being here, for their ills because you're here. Most of them, I think, are just hot air. You know, the levels of violence are virtually non-existent, thankfully. But we need to be, you know, the part of what we're doing and what we felt the need to do is just to create some sort of that platform where people can feel I could join that particular activity and it will be safe because there are people there that have got my back. You know, I hate the fact that we even need to be doing it. It's just appalling.
Well, we're at an important. I think we're at an important crossroads in history. We're at a moment here. I think you might have shared something on social media that I saw recently, James, where it said that what are our children going to ask of us? What did we do? What did we do in this moment?
Yeah,
because there is. I fear going deeper into politics. I fear fascism is on the rise.
Yeah,
it's coming back.
Yeah.
And I fear that that's a very, very dark place, and that's not a place that I want my children to go to.
Well, one of the other things that I shared recently, which really resonated with me, was, you know, particularly having only recently commemorated the 80th anniversary of the end of the war, of the Second World War, and there was a piece, and I think I shared it. You may have seen it, and you just said, you know, the few did not fight and give their lives so that 80 years later you can repeat it and vote for fascism.
Oh yeah, I saw that. That was very powerful.
Because
it's the same ingredients.
It cannot be allowed to happen.
Yes.
It's the same ingredients of where you get poverty and where you get deprivation and you get people feeling like their voices are not heard. And you get all that, and then somebody comes in and manipulates that for their own ends.
That starts to sound like them, but with a loud voice.
Yeah.
So how can, you know, this is what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to amplify voices like yours. I'm trying to share this as wide as possible. How can we build those connections with people?
Well, the problem as it is at the moment is actually not, we're talking specifically at the moment about immigration. But as you say, you know, when this, you know, in the 30s, when things started that led to the Second World War, it wasn't a case. At first, it's who do you blame first, who do you blame second, who's next, who's after that, and it's just if you allow it to get out of control, as it did then, it just becomes a series of attacking the next vulnerable group that you can find. You know, there was a situation a couple of weeks ago. There is the Harvey Centre are organising a Pride event in a couple of weeks, Saturday week, so on the 11th. Please go and support it. They started getting attacked by the local Reform Party, saying, "Is this an appropriate thing for children to be attending?" Well, why wouldn't it be? And what the hell do they think's going on there? Yeah, I have to say I was incredibly proud of our town in the way it responded to that when it was it was on the Reform Facebook page, Harlow's Reform. It was on their Facebook page. It was highlighted by your Harlow, and the attacks that they got for it from decent, sensible people in this town. It's like, yes, go Harlow. I'm there are, and it just proves it. There are really good people out there who just see this rubbish and go, that's not me. Get out of it. This is not what we want in our town. This, our town is better than this. And they're such a principled bunch that they took down the post.
Good.
Good. Well, good that it's gone, but what a bunch of principles. This is what we feel.
And then we'll disappear.
Oh no! Look, all these people are having a go at us. Let's take it down so they go away and forget about us.
I think we need to.
That says a lot, doesn't it?
We need to listen to the very real fears that people have, and some of it's about information. Some of it is about having a conversation and saying, and people being allowed to say what they're afraid of, even if it's bonkers, and then being able to say, okay, but let's look at the reality of the situation. And here's some statistics about blah, 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 blah. When people say to you, I don't know, the whole thing as if we're kind of the country's being invaded and we're being taken over and all. And I understand where they're coming from in a way and where some of the fears are coming from. But I think we can address those fears and bring a bit of reality into it and make people feel better. Oh, okay. Oh, I didn't realise that was the actual truth of it. And I think some communities, there are problems in the system. The whole Home Office structure is really, it's like the NHS, isn't it? There are problems in it. It was like the EU. Of course, there were problems that needed addressing. I think we can all agree on the fact there are problems that need sorting out, because it's not a great system for anybody, whether you're an asylum seeker or whether, it is really hard for people who live in the communities like in Kent, that are on the kind of front line, as it were, of lots and lots of people coming in, and you listen to the stories there about schools and the infrastructure and everything, and you think, it's hard. You can see nobody's saying there are not issues that need dealing with, for everybody's sake, for everyone in the whole system, But that doesn't mean that you then have to just blame it on the wrong people. It's back to where we started from. Well, whose fault is it? And that, unfortunately, that is complicated. And it's much easier to make a sort of shouty soundbite than it is to actually sit down and think, how the heck do we solve this problem? But these problems are solvable. I mean,
I hear that the work that you two are doing is more towards solving the problem than, say, ID cards. The cramp down of well, no, I think that also moves into that. That's starting to move us into that area that's would work nicely for fascism. Would work nicely for control of the population. Moving us further, people have talked about this a lot. How we're moving closer to 1984 and that controlled state. What would that look like for all of us? Is that really a space that we all want to be in?
It's as I said to you earlier, I've been there the last few days. I've been in Liverpool at the Labour conference. You will not be surprised to learn that ID cards was a fairly hot topic with.
And what is the feedback that you've got from the Labour conference?
I think there is definitely a mixed audience on this. Personally, I have absolutely no issue with having an ID card. Virtually every other country in Europe has them. And, of course, the little Englanders will say, well, that's why we shouldn't have it in the first place. We can't have that, because it's just not British. And maybe it isn't, but it comes back to essentially how much is control the state might have over the information that's held on there. And, bottom line, if you've got nothing to hide, you've probably got nothing to fear in terms of that. That said, I think we all carry so many different forms of ID already. Does it need another tier of what's going to be a multi-billion-pound IT project? We all know how successful that was with the COVID app. billions of pounds
and
that
we've
vanished
also
and achieved
well,
absolutely
and-
zilch. And if I just finish it,
course.
what I'd say was, the idea that I proposed to a few people is, look, if you seriously wanted to do something about whether people can work or they can't, well, the law is already there to tell employers you cannot employ people, you should not employ them if they can't produce documentation to say that they're allowed to work. Now, that's generally in the form of a national insurance number. Well, why build a whole new system when you don't need to? Stick a photo on a national insurance card, job done.
I think this is where the conspiracy theory starts to come in, because you've explained how simple the system already is. And so this is where people start to say, well, isn't this the way that they get rid of money? The way that they control our taxes? The way that if there's a COVID too, that they will make sure that everyone's behaving to the rules that are set out, because we'll stop your money, we'll stop your income, we'll stop your movement.
Yeah. Oh, I heard somebody was ranting on. I can't remember who it was now, and I probably shouldn't name him if I could, but it was kind of about it. The next thing, it will be used to control what food we buy, how much petrol we're allowed, to see how far we can travel, and all the rest of it. And it's like, really? I do not believe that the current government, and I'll say it that way, is remotely interested in impinging on anybody's freedoms like that. Now, another one, a different government might well have all that information at its hands, at its control, and choose to go down that route. But I suspect that they would pick on marginalised and vulnerable people first, because they're the easy targets. The ones that they're going to stand up and shout and make a fuss about it, they'll leave us alone for a while, because they'll just deal, and it will be salami tactics. And let's just do that little bit first, and then we'll have another little slice here and another little slice there, and it will carry on. But I do not for one moment believe that is the intention behind it. Do I think the ID card thing as it stands at the moment is the best answer? No. Doesn't mean I'm opposed to them. I just don't think that that the country needs or can necessarily afford another huge multi-billion-pound IT project, because we all know governments are hopeless at running stuff like that. It doesn't matter what colour the government is; they're bloody useless when it comes to things like that.
That's what we've seen again and again.
Absolutely, and
they haven't got the best track record.
No, they haven't. And it's I've got a nephew that works in the civil service, and the things he'll tell you about the incompetence that he encounters on a daily basis, and I've now probably just incurred the wrath of every civil servant that I know. But I think we all have to accept, as Jokey was saying, it's not the fault of any one government, it's government department or anything like that. It's a cumulative effect over years, where some people have felt that the system hasn't looked out for them in the way it should have done, and it has just reached that sort of melting point now where everything's going boom. And right, who do we blame? There's the first easy target. Let's have a go at them. And it's just not on. Are there simple fixes? No, there aren't simple fixes, or we would have done them.
You say don't have hotels, but then where do you put people? You've got to put them somewhere. And, lots of different things were tried, weren't they, by different... You look at Scotland and what were they using, boats or something? And, nothing is that easy to fix. But so again, so much misinformation. I heard somebody banging on the radio the other morning about luxury hotels. I'm like, have you actually ever been in one?
Have you been to the Bell Hotel?
I have, actually.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Or another one which will remain nameless, where one of the agencies I work with was saying it's one of the places where I felt I had to wipe my feet coming out. I think,
you shouldn't have done that when I'd just taken this big of water.
But it's like,
I think the thing with these things as well, when we talk about like the money that we're putting these people in hotels, these immigrants, these people that have travelled across the water, I think we often forget that they're human beings.
Yeah.
I think our media and our politicians dehumanise them so easily.
Absolutely.
And so that the normal public, everyone else forgets that they're human beings that are looking to survive.
And
First of all,
and that's all part of the playbook, isn't it? Is just treat them as a number, as a commodity, as a package, rather than a human being. We don't know what their circumstances are. Yes, there are going to be people that are playing the system, but anybody that thinks there aren't people that were born in this country that aren't playing every system they can get themselves around, it's just deluded. So that, yes, there are going to be some that are coming here, and we need to be finding out who they are, and they go back where they came from. I don't have a problem with any of that, but when you just vilify everybody that is showing the slightest intention of coming here, they may have very good reasons. We were talking about the reactions to some of this a while back, and there was a story that I saw, and it was on. It was a BBC thing, probably 2 or 3 weeks ago now, and it was a reporter had gone out to one of the Costas in Spain and was talking to some Brits there about why they were there, and they were recent, maybe in some ways, recent people that have moved, although it's much more challenging now, of course, because the idiots all voted for Brexit. One lady struck me as the sort of embodying the whole nonsense of the thing when she was asked by this reporter, British lady, why she was living in Spain, and she said, well, Britain's too full of foreigners now, isn't it? With not a slightest hint of irony. Wonder what the Spanish think about you being here, darling. Just no sense of irony about it.
And are you even going to attempt to learn Spanish?
Of course not, because they'll all go to the British pub, won't they? Which is a place, if I see one anywhere around the world, I avoid it like the plague. I want to get into the local culture. What's the point of travelling if you just go to somewhere that sounds and looks exactly like where you've come from? It just happens to have a bit more sun. Just utter nonsense. But again,
so how can we shift that conversation then? How can we help people that have got that mindset? Of Luton is a place that's very overcrowded. And actually, I'll be honest, I went to Luton last year, and I was walking down the high street, and I felt like there was a lot of faces looking at me, and there was, because I was the only British middle-aged white male walking down the street. And I think that looking at me was actually fear of why is that guy walking through our community. They're normally fearful of us. He should also show a bit of fear, potentially. So I can empathise with that to some degree. I don't think it's right that our country hasn't been taken over.
No.
But I can understand that if someone else was walking down the street having that experience, could be like, oh, this doesn't feel like my home anymore. So how can we change that?
I wish I had a simple answer to it. I don't think there is one, because if there was, we'd have all employed it by now. I think just firstly, all of that nonsense has to be called out for exactly what it is. Every time you hear it, people have got to stand up and say, that's rubbish. Just utter rubbish. And I get it, it's easier for some people to do that than others. I was daft enough to put myself in front of the electorate and say, vote for me. I'm going to do this, and I will continue to be a champion of my community. But that includes everybody. My ward, and in my current role as leader of the party, I have to do. And it's not a have to in the sense that it's a chore. I do that for the entire town. And you have to stand up and be counted. But I equally understand there are plenty of people that are fearful of doing that. And what we need to do, those of us that are prepared to stand up and feel comfortable doing so, and I don't always feel comfortable doing it, to be honest. There are days when you think, I'm just going to get so much stick for this. But it doesn't matter, because it's right. It is right to do it. And hopefully if more and more of us find, and I'm not saying I've got the courage to do it, but more and more people do find the courage to join us on that exercise, that experience, that adventure, the journey of getting down that route, the more that come along there, it will, so it's the same in anything, isn't it? If a couple of people stand up and say, it's okay, I've got your back, I'm not putting up with this nonsense, somebody else might think, oh, actually, I need to do that as well. And so it may well be a very lengthy process. We put the walk thing together very quickly a couple of weeks back, I was really pleased to see so many people there, because it could have been you and me going for a pot around the town.
Yeah.
It turned out that there was like 100 or so people there, and that was great. We'll do it again, possibly in a few weeks' time. So right, come and do it again, because we'll have more cake, which is always a good thing. But I think you just have to stand up and be counted, in the hope that firstly people will start to listen, but secondly that you actually empower somebody else to do the same thing. And come
but
along.
It is very scary putting yourself out there in the world, putting yourself forward. If you've got an opinion, sharing that opinion and your voice. Now, Jokey, you helped me once with that. We had a conversation together once, and you helped me find a lot of courage. And I was thinking at this point, it'd be good to talk about where the church and where the Bible tells us about finding courage.
Yeah. Well, because I think there's a lot of misinformation and wrong views. I spend a lot of my life saying to people, well, the God you've just told me you don't want to believe in, I don't want to believe in either. Because that's not one I recognise. Thank you very much. So it's like, I think with all these things, it's about, what did we do? We went and sat on a bench or had a drink together or something, didn't we?
Yes,
and I think that's where you start. You start by meeting people. What did Jesus do all the time? Eat with people. We're back to the food again.
Back to food,
but
yes.
what did he do?
It's also storytelling.
Storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me about yourself, and you start by having a conversation with somebody. And often, food is a great icebreaker, but, just sitting down and having a conversation and being prepared to listen to where people are coming from, but then not being afraid. And Jesus wasn't, I wish I could do it like Jesus did, though, because he could tell people, he could let them know that they were so loved when they felt so unloved. And a lot of people, that's where they're coming from, a place of fear, a place of where they feel like people don't actually love them, or, they've done something that they feel is, they'll be judged forever or whatever. So, but he was amazing at actually, at the same time, both making people feel loved, but also somehow he could put his finger right on whatever it was in their life that was wrong for them.
Well, you do that too, Jokey.
And
I've firsthand, I've seen that,
that's
with
really
myself.
kind to say. But I think that's the thing, isn't it? I think I'm always saying to people, God doesn't want us to live in shame or in fear, and we have to find a way of negotiating that, and listening to people. So that's why I want to listen to everybody, So even the people, the people who are saying stuff I don't agree with, well, why do you think that? And unpicking it and unpacking it over a conversation. And, I think some of it you can allay people's fears just by bringing some reality or some real statistics where they've been told stuff that is crazy. You can just simply correct that, can't you, with real information? But there's also like, well, come and meet this person, and I mean, the Bible says, in Christ there is no male or female, no Jew or Greek, no whatever, everybody is equal in that sense. And I think that's a wonderful starting place too, that actually for us, like that group I told you about at Combat, what we all have in common is that we all believe in a God that absolutely loves us. We all believe, and they are much braver than me. There's stuff they've sacrificed. When I hear somebody the other day was saying, he's given up a lot for his faith. And he said, I've really just got the clothes that I'm standing up in, but I'm so much happier because I'm not living a toxic life anymore. And he was somebody who came from a, position of quite a bit of power and material wealth, but realised this is completely toxic, and he stepped out of it. And that's so brave, and I haven't had to do that in my life. But I think, we can all find things in common, and it's like that banner that's up at the church now, the More in Common, thanks to, shout out to Ron Kingsmill and Joe who found it in a cupboard at Church Street, but it was a banner that was made by Heart for Harlow when Joe Cox was killed, and they're more in common than that which divides us. But that sums it up, really. I think as human beings, we all have that in common. We're all human beings. We can start with that. I believe that we are all loved by God and that he wants the best for us. And that is sometimes pretty hard because you might not want to give up the thing that is actually like this guy who thought he was going to find happiness in wealth and having a house and being in a, important position. And I think increasingly we're realising, no, there isn't happiness in that. That's not what happiness is about, and it is about all these other things like, values and I think we can start in a kind of commonality. So even if people don't have a belief, like I can see in James that he loves his community, that he's trying to make things better for people. Well, that is something, we can start with. We've actually got a lot of shared values. I might not agree with him about everything, but...
and what would that be then?
Well, yeah, let's get into it now. Let's get the juicy stuff.
But, it's you start with what you have got in common, don't you? And I think everyone can have, a conversation about shared values. Obviously for me, I'm trying to say there's something really important about Jesus, about what he modelled and what he did and the difference that he can make in our lives in a real way now. But I think, wherever you come from, for me, I'd meet people from other faiths and people who just start from a place of having good values. And actually a lot of what we think of as British values are based on biblical principles, if you go back to it. And a lot of our laws are. So, you find a starting place that you can actually have something in common. And also, like that thing I said, is about listening to. And I think a lot of the people who are angry, I understand why they're angry, because nobody's listened to them for years or cares about them, and some of it is to do with class and power and all these things that we've, alluded to. And I think we just have to give those people a chance to really say what they think and what they feel and what they're frightened of, and let their anger kind of come out, but then actually try to do something about it, to do something about it together. Because I think it's like putting up a false enemy, isn't it? And for me, obviously, because I'm dealing with principalities and powers and spiritual things, I see like that this is evil at work in the world, manipulating these things. Other people wouldn't see it like that, although we could probably all agree that it's evil, some of the principles behind what's going on now. But that's what's so sad. That's what makes me really heartbroken for those people, because I think you are being manipulated and by people that actually don't want the best for you. They don't care about you, really. And I think we both have in common that we want everybody to feel cared about and listened to. And that's a really important starting place. We might have a different, I would try to talk about Jesus at some point in a conversation.
No.
But it's not necessarily where I would start from unless people ask me. I think often I will try and get to know somebody, build relationship with them, let them know that I'm coming from a place where, I want to help and care about them. And often that would be in a practical way, like giving them furniture or food or something, We have that's the whole of, MRCT and Food Bank and all that, and is about...
So going back to that thing of treating each other like human beings first, and then talking about ideas and principles.
You start from that. And obviously it's easy for me because I walk around wearing a dog collar and a big cross, that people know that I'm coming from a Christian place. In MRCT, you wouldn't necessarily know that whole organisation is founded on Christian principles, but it is. and
Sheep there.
black sheep, not at all. But it's it's you don't always start from there, but for me that's an important motivation. And I think for me, I mean, I was, I drifted in and out of faith over my life as well, so I know what it feels like to have lots of questions and to think. I can remember thinking when I went to university and it was a Christian college, and they said to me, "Oh, you do know this is a Christian college," and I was thinking, "Yeah, but you won't get me." So yeah, absolutely. So I get that, but I think it's different, maybe different starting points. But I think there's just you start from actually trying to care about one another and listen to people and let people know that they're loved, and that's
I can't stress the benefit of listening to people enough, of how heavily that's influenced my life and the things that I do within my community. Having a space like this,
what you're doing
what we're doing here, having these conversations, and I think I'd love to be able to find a way that everyone could be doing this, having these conversations on purpose, having these moments where we sit down and connect with each other. I didn't used to do this in my life.
No.
And I know a lot of people don't. A lot of people sit in isolation. They don't connect with each other. They don't talk about ideas, and they don't share food with each other. And
they're interacting virtually.
They're interacting virtually and not
in reality.
Yeah.
I heard this awful thing on the radio the other day about AI, and I know, ChatGPT, jolly useful in all sorts of ways and everything else, but I was kind of horrified to hear that not only were people thinking that ChatGPT was their friend, they were using it as their therapist. And then there was an example of where a chap had told ChatGPT that he was feeling incredibly low and suicidal, really, was what was going on. And could ChatGPT tell him where the highest bridge was? So it came out with all the kind of therapy talk about why he was feeling low, but then proceeded to tell him where the highest bridge was, because it couldn't differentiate between, because no one had programmed.
There seems to be a generation.
That's horrific, isn't it? If there's people
that are trusting within a system, something that isn't real, that isn't human,
and again,
to help make decisions.
Who's manipulating that? Where's all that massive money going behind that? And I don't want to get all 1984 about it. You mentioned that earlier, but that you do have to worry about these things, don't you? And and we see our children, especially the lockdown youngsters, who were forced into interacting virtually because that's all there was, and that's a real worry. So, and I think anything that can get human beings together, talking to one another and listening to one another, has to be a good place to start.
Also, doing that, but in the case of what we've been talking about generally, the wider thing is exploring other cultures as well. And this weekend, for example, is going to be amazing. Tomorrow, this October is Black History Month. Harlow has its Black History Festival tomorrow, Saturday.
Yes, which I'll be there.
Great. I will see you there. I'm going to be there all day.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Also, you've got the Islamic Centre out on Parendon Road. I've got an open day on Sunday. So you can go to, so you've got two opportunities there in the town to go to, both free events. Go along to the Black History Festival and just immerse yourself in the culture and talk to people there. Talk to people there and eat something with them and dance with them. There'll be dancing, there'll be drum banging, because Ethel will have all her drums out and you'll have no excuse not to be banging away on the drums. But then again, on Sunday, up at the mosque, at the Islamic Centre on Parendon Road, you've got another opportunity. Go there. They're doing the same thing as they've done the last couple of years. Loads of displays and stuff there to talk about their faith. I started this off when we were joking about, maybe not joking. I don't have a faith. That doesn't mean I'm not interested. It fascinates me. It really does. Maybe one day I'll find one that suits me, but I haven't yet. But that doesn't mean I'm not interested, because it's all part of that whole experience of immersing and learning about other cultures and people. And I think if you don't understand, you can't just dismiss somebody's faith as because it's part of them. So I can't throw that aside and say, well, I don't want to talk about that. Talk to me about a recipe. As much as I'm not really interested in the recipe, it comes as a whole. It's a complete package of that person, in the same way that, I don't bring much faith into a conversation because it's not there. But that's, again, that lack of it is part of who I am. And there are, we've had conversations about it. There are others who have equally talked to me about their different faiths, and I find it genuinely fascinating to talk about.
Yeah, no, that's really
it could be a whole another podcast.
That's a really exciting place
that.
to be, I think, in that space of curiosity.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a secret. I didn't used to talk to people at all. If we go back in time 2 or 3 years ago, I would not be doing this. It used to be very much, I was fearful of being clueless. But now I'm quite excited to go into a space clueless. I'm quite excited to go to Black History Month tomorrow and not know what I'm going to expect, and that I might come away and learn something. I might take something new from it.
If you come away with nothing, you'll have learned how to bang a drum.
Exactly.
Guaranteed. Absolutely guaranteed. But it will be a lot of fun.
But what I'm trying to get at is there's nothing to be afraid of. There's no fear within the unknown, within the discovery, within curiosity.
Yeah.
There's actually a lot of excitement to be found there.
I think that's actually, you've probably nailed part of the problem there, is that people are scared. Some people are scared because they don't have the curiosity to go and discover. It's like, this is what I know. Very narrow band of where I am. I know this,
and I guess there's some safety there.
And exactly that. It's a safe space, and it is just pushing yourself that little bit more to go and discover.
For me personally, there was no growth in that safe space.
Yeah,
there was a stagnation.
It's like the people at home sat with their computer, isn't it? And it's the thing is, it does take courage to step out, and I think sometimes you have to give people time. I think. In some of my community stuff over the years, we've worked with new developers on some of the new estates. And we made a mistake when we first went into Newhall. We went in too soon as the church to try to engage with people. And we had sort of some limited success. But what we didn't clock was that, particularly with people coming in from London. So I then lived in Church Langley. We had it's a dead end. So there's a green at the bottom of the road, always full of children playing ball. Go to Newhall, it had Teletubby Hill and all that lovely green, and I thought, why is there no children? Why are the children not playing?
Yes, yeah.
And they're tiny little gardens, and you could hear, it was like, if anyone's old enough to remember Stepford Wives, it was a bit like that. You're walking around and you could hear people, but there was nobody. There was just no one around. And I've learned now, with experience of a few estates, including the one next to my church, it takes people, particularly when they're moving in from London, about 2 years until everyone feels confident to come out of their doors and talk to people and let their children play. And because, they might have come from a place where it wasn't safe to let their kids out, or they didn't feel it was. And, and I've remembered as well a girl that I was taking furniture to, and she was like, why is everyone smiling at me? It's freaking me out. I'm like, it's all right. They're just being friendly, And it's that thing. And sometimes we all need a bit of time, but it's trying to get people to take that first step of, courage, isn't it, to engage with one another and to.
And that's okay to take time.
It is okay.
Yeah, going back to me and my discovery with curiosity.
Yeah.
Took me till 40.
Yeah,
it took me 40 years to feel okay.
We're all on a journey, aren't we, in things, and we make mistakes or we get it wrong or we're scared. The important thing is actually doing it in the end, And so now, if we were starting a project on a new estate, I'd do it differently. I have done it differently, and also don't expect everyone to start mixing and integrating and doing things for a while, because, you've got to have time to adjust and feel safe and know where everything is, and and maybe we can look at ways of helping people to do that more effectively by telling them where all the things are or whatever. But, you know, that's a human thing. And, so we need to kind of be aware of that in how we approach people. And so, you know, I'm not wanting to criticise, you know, the genuine, even the people who you think are getting it wrong. You can understand where they're coming from. That's what I'm saying. I don't want to feel like I'm being really judgy about everyone who's, you know, flying a flag or out on the street or whatever, because I want to find out, why are you feeling like that?
I wonder if there's a way that we can invite those conversations in to our spaces, into your safe space, into, whilst you have this, you're building this community of a safe space. Is there room for the other side of the conversation?
I'd say there has to be, because if there isn't, we're as guilty as those that we're accusing of creating the division. You know, so if people had come along on that walk a couple of weeks back and said, "Well, I'm flying a flag," you know, it's interesting that they're flying them on the lampposts and they're not flying them in their houses. I do find that slightly curious, but that's another. But not many.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, but if they, you know, people want to turn up and have an open conversation, you know, and as long as they're respectful, because we will be, you know, it's a respectful, it's a moderate, you know, well-tempered conversation. I'm happy to do that, because I think if we said, "Don't come along if you're one of the flag wavers," we're no better than them. You know, and we're creating a division there, and that's completely the opposite of what we're trying to do. You know, and because I would say some of those people that are, they may be scared, they may be feared as to why, and that's why they're flying the flags. If they come and meet the people that they are, some of the people that they're perceived to be the part of the problem for them, hopefully they'd go away from it with a different attitude. So yes, by all means, it was an open walk. We had one gentleman use some fairly colourful language, but we're certainly not going to repeat that. But on the whole, it was met with just tolerance and respect. A lot of people just completely ignored us, but that's not remotely surprising. I think we picked up quite a few people along the way that were like, "Oh, what's this? Oh yeah, well, yeah."
Lots of smiles.
Yeah, lots of, yes, it always disarms people when you smile at them, doesn't it? But no, you know, if we don't invite, you know, or welcome everybody on board with it, then we're no better than those that we're critical of. And that's the reason we're doing this in the first place.
Yeah, because I think like the sort of cancel culture thing is not, you know, I don't think that's a healthy thing to just like, I don't like what you're saying, so you can't speak. You know, I think there has to be respect and not just people shouting and swearing at you. But, yeah, why not have a conversation and actually try to talk about, and have some people there with real knowledge who, you know, have either lived experience or because of the work they're doing have a good understanding of the reality of the situation, who can actually speak into it and challenge some of the views that are misguided or, you know, overinflated or whatever. You know, and I think there is common ground for everybody, because I think everyone, it's a kind of a human thing to feel worried about strangers, and some of that is a kind of a, you know, built into our sort of DNA for sensible reasons, isn't it? Of, you know, protection and all the rest of it. It's sort of going, you know, back in time. But I think, and every culture would probably have that kind of, you know, and again, you look at the Bible, it's full of all that, you know. Look at the things like the Good Samaritan, you know, it's like, "Oh, I can't go near him, he's not one of us," you know, that kind of idea. So that's an understandable fear, but actually probably every culture and country has that. And so you'd have that in common, actually, if you started talking to each other about it. Well, who don't you like that's coming into your country, or who don't, you know, everybody can be suspicious or, you know, a bit funny about, you know, and so you can have a conversation about that, can't you? And actually say, yeah, okay, yeah, we don't like them, you know, and sort of, and all that. I remember once I think I was in Bulgaria, and I made the mistake of looking at this thing and going, oh, it's a Turkish coffee maker, and then hit the roof because there was this sort of dislike of the Turks from like 500 years ago or something, you know, and I was like, oh, here we go again, you know, so I'd put my foot in it because, you know, so lots of places have their prejudices against somebody. So, I mean, actually, you could have a conversation about that, you know, couldn't you? And actually find that
we humans really do know how to hold a grudge.
I know, we do. So it's like, but, you know, actually, probably humanly, that's a thing. You know, as I say, in Christian terms, we hope to come to a point where we say what we've got in common is our faith, and therefore we're forgetting about all the rest of it because that's the thing we have in common, and we can work together because of it, even if, you know, it's like, well, it'd be like football, isn't it? You know, if your rival team or whatever, everyone has some sort of prejudice about somebody. But, you know, it's how you let that affect you, isn't it? And how you treat people. And, yeah, and a conversation can just sort out a whole lot of that. Really.
We can discover so much here
within
this space. And like I say, I have personally. And I think the communities that I'm connecting with as well. And I'm looking at ways in which we can bring those conversations together. At this point in this conversation, I like to sometimes go to a bit of a hypothetical. Go on a bit of a journey. So if you're prepared for this, we can go time traveling on this podcast.
Okay.
So if we was to go time traveling and we was to go back in time to bring someone back from the past and bring them to now to join this conversation of this moment of division, where would we go, James? First of all, who would we go and pick up?
Nelson Mandela.
And what do you think he would add to this conversation?
Well, he's just one of I'm trying to think of a better example of somebody that was in the worst possible position they could be in a country that was ruled by people that just basically hated his existence. And yet, when he was released from prison, his only motivation was to make that country free for everybody. Yeah, and give equal status to everybody in it. He appeared to hold no grudge at all. It was like, if I do that, what's the point? Got together with, we're going down the church route now, with Bishop Desmond Tutu to set up the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which just pulled people together and said, look, we have to, you know, there's been this animosity. It can't continue because the country cannot survive. We cannot go forward as a country unless we bring people together and say, yep, this happened and it was awful that it happened, but we have to put it aside and move forward. And I think a greater example of statesmanship, of leadership, you're going to be hard pushed to find than what he demonstrated. And, you know, the real sadness was that he spent so much of his life in prison and therefore had such a very short time to make an impact when he was released and became president. Imagine, you know, if he'd have been in that position 20 years earlier, just imagine what he could have done, and not just in South Africa, but, you know, he was a figure that inspired people across the world. Just an incredible character.
And what do you think he would say to this moment? What advice would he give to us to be able to make a change?
I think he'd like the idea that we were trying to get people together over tea and cake. I really do. I think his whole method seemed to be about just bringing people together. Let's just saying, let's park all the prejudices, all the animosity, park it at the door. Come in, sit down, talk, and you'll find out where we started with this, and it's been a recurring theme, and it goes on. You know, we have far more in common than that which divides us. And I think he would get behind that. I can't speak for him, but I'm absolutely certain he would get behind that as a mantra to just let's do this. So I think that's where his approach would be, and I'm not remotely comparing us to Mandela or Desmond Tutu in that sense, but it's something that is an inspiration, and it's a motivation that's got us going on this, is that we just have to bring people together to talk to each other, because once they do that and they start to understand each other, then hopefully that animosity and the division and the prejudice starts to dissipate.
But I think you're giving a great example there of where it has changed.
Yeah.
Where it did change in the past. Someone did bring people together through talking.
Yeah.
And the truth and reconciliation thing, which was really, that's really hard to do, but so important, because again, you have people who had such painful things to, and how do you get beyond that? But the unforgiveness is, it's ending up, it poisons you, not the person that you want to be.
That you're angry at, or the situation.
But it's you that actually gets kind of, killed by it in a way if you let it. But forgiveness is so hard in, when you've really had terrible things happen. So I think that truth and reconciliation process that came out of that was really important. Funnily enough, I was just thinking about Mo Molam, talking about
love Mo.
and the Irish piece. I was thinking, where's Mo Molam when you need her? Somebody who could just sort of bang people's heads together and say, for goodness sake, just talk to each other. But it's that same thing of talk to each other, stop messing about, and just get on with it. And I think. Of course, I'm going to say Jesus, because he's always the answer to everything. But on another way, he's still with us now. But actually, the physical human embodiment of Jesus, I think, was really good at kind of bringing warring factions together, and people who, you think of somebody like when he was Saul, who was a persecutor of Christians and thought, quite genuine, very devout Jew, thought he was doing the right thing by actually persecuting Christians, and was a terrifying person to the early church. And yet, boom, Jesus literally knocked him off his horse, and kind of all sorts of things happened. And then he turned into the most amazing Christian, and so it's like, I think people can be completely transformed and have their lives changed and do all kinds of different things. But yeah, I probably would have picked Nelson Mandela as well, as a somebody who was a living embodiment, who actually had done lots of stuff wrong in his life. He'd been pretty violent, pretty angry for all sorts of very understandable reasons, but he came, and maybe he needed that time in jail that long to turn himself around. I don't know. I mean, it's amazing grace, really, that turned him around, that made him able to, because he would have been, everyone would have understood his just coming out being angry and bitter and everything, but he didn't. He just did something altogether amazing. And I think, that's what we need, is people who can, hear one another, listening to each other. Again, in that whole process, it was really important for people to hear one another, but not just in a kind of ranty way, but actually to really listen and meet, like you say, meet together as human beings, because that is what we've all got in common, and so I think we're back to that as the
I've often thought, that what is the one thing that could unite the human race on this planet, and I fear that it's probably going to be that, and I'm sure it will eventually happen, with the discovery of an alien life elsewhere in the universe, and suddenly we'll be like,
something to bring us together.
Yeah. We'd all be united. That's why I remember my parents sort of saying, because I'm adopted, so I had older parents, so they'd been through the war, and my dad in Burma and everything, and they, sometimes they would go, we need another war to bring everything, but
yes, and I've heard that, yes.
Some element of where we can be all united in a fear of something. So, I don't know.
United, so yes, I think that thing about aliens is united in fear, but maybe we could look towards united being in hope. Yeah. So in this time machine that we're in, what does the future look like? What are your hopes and dreams as we move forward?
Oh,
Aliens?
No. I mean, wouldn't it be great to discover that there is something else out there? Yeah, and I'm sure there, at some point we will, but probably not in my lifetime.
Well, have heard of Free Eye Atlas?
No.
Do you not know about Free Eye Atlas?
No.
This is the comet meteor. We don't know what it is. It's currently at its closest orbit to Mars today.
Yeah, I think I did hear something about that.
And
Tuned out of it.
on the 30th of October, it will be the last chance we get to see it before it goes behind the sun. But it's showing materials that has never been seen before. Our telescopes don't recognise what it is. It's got light coming from the front.
I'm going to Google when I go home.
I'm not sure. So I don't know how you spell it. I'll just type it in anyway, and I'm sure you'll pick it up. Free Eye Atlas. So we're in a moment of extraterrestrial discovery potentially, and then there's also Mars.
Yeah.
The rocks on Mars. Do you know about the rocks?
Oh yeah.
They found these spots on a rock on Mars
I know.
that could be signs of life.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much that we don't know, and I think things like global warming, things like those sort of threats.
Mm-hmm.
If because that also can unite people in actually all of us are up a gum tree environmentally, and some people it's more obvious than others, but there's things like that I suppose the old Bible thumpers would do it by telling you Jesus is coming back tomorrow and you're all going to hell. So it's not where I'd start from necessarily, but again, the fear, it's a kind of irony, isn't it, that fear can bring you together as well as divide you. But yeah, I would rather it was something more positive that we were all brought together by. But yeah, sometimes, as you say, a bigger threat than who can we blame, for things might be, even something like environmental disaster or those sorts of things where actually we all need to work together to. And I think there is something very, the idea of if we all work together, we can make the world a better place. It sounds like, kind of a cheesy song, but there is a real truth in that, isn't there? That actually, if we do work together, we are, we really can change things and for the better. And I think that's an exciting thought, because everyone has different skills and talents and different perspectives to bring to bear on it. And I think people don't want to feel like they're useless or no good at any. I hear lots of people saying, oh, what can I do? Or, I'm no good at this or, whatever. And that's not how God sees us. And it's not how I think we want to see each other. We want to see actually everyone has a value. Everyone can bring something to the table. And we all have, and some people quite kind of hidden but amazing skills. It's just tapping into it, isn't it? And finding, it's like the neurodivergence thing. If we can see something as a superpower rather than a problem,
yes.
Then who knows what we can do together. And that's really exciting, and I think if we could look at each other and think, what can we bring to the collective table, as it were, bringing it back to, and what's at the centre of every church? A table that you gather round to eat together. So back to the food again. But, that whole thing of actually what can we bring to the table? And I think that's fascinating. It's so exciting to find out about people and also to see people who felt useless or disempowered or trodden on or whatever it might be. It's so wonderful to see people thinking, I have a value, I do have a value and I have something to offer and here it is, and that's fantastic to see. And I think that's what, because that's the equality for me, that actually God made and knows every one of us, and we're all unique and we're all special. And what we've got in common for him is we are all his children and he loves us equally. And you don't have to be, a millionaire or Einstein or, if God can love you, if the Creator loves you and has made you, and there's something amazing to come out of all of us. We just need to to find that. And I think, I mean, God knows what that is, but often people don't know themselves. But in loving one another, in caring for one another, in making people feel whatever it might be, forgiven or loved or cared about or just given practical help or whatever it is, can release things in people. And, you know, when you see people begin to change and turn their lives around, and I've had it in my own life as well, you know, you've talked about it in your life, it's a wonderful thing. And that is so empowering. And if we could find a way of making that happen more, then I think, yeah, wouldn't it be great, you know?
Just thinking about what you're saying now, if we're leaping forward now, are you a Trekkie?
Do you know what? I grew up watching Star Trek.
Me
Yeah.
too.
So here, there's something that's just ticked around in my head there. And you know, one of the things that one of my ideas when we were sort of talking about setting up, we'll get to the point in a sec.
Okay.
On this Community Colours project. Yeah, when that first started, my initial thought, and it was actually sparked by a colleague of mine, Lainey Shears. I'll give her credit for this one. Big her up. And she was talking about, well, why can't we organise some sort of community picnic in the town park? Yeah, but there were a few hurdles, and whilst we were trying to overcome those, the whole ribbons thing was started around the town, and that's when Jokey and I had the conversation. And it's like, yeah, let's do this. But so there's two aspects to it. So on the Star Trek thing, you know, what would make the big difference? Break down the language barrier. Now, anybody that watches Star Trek will know that all these different alien species meet each other and they come up on the screen, but they all speak the same language, or the system, a computer system of some description, translates
Like the
in there.
babelfish in
So you
Yeah.
have this universal translator, so that
Universal language.
there
yeah,
is
yeah.
no language barrier there if you choose to use that system. And I think that's, you know, and we're you know, it's not easy to learn another language. I'm terrible at it. I did try at school. I was useless. I've picked up. Always try and learn a few words wherever I go. Always start with please and thank you, and the next one to learn is I'll have a beer, please.
Where's the loo? That's my one. Where's the loo?
Where's the toilet?
But I mean, yeah, wouldn't that be fantastic if we could all just talk to each other without? And again, it all comes back to the communication thing, but that language barrier is gone because we've got that tool. And I dare say, with all the AI stuff and the rest of it, it's not going to be long.
Oh, the new AirPods, Apple AirPods, have that feature.
Really?
Yes, that it will
Wow.
process the language.
Yeah,
It feels like such a dinosaur
Yeah.
that I don't know these
I've
things,
given you
but-
2 bits of information
Yeah,
today.
you can kind of do it on your phone.
You
can't
can
But
do it
to
on your phone.
simultaneously.
Yes, but yeah, you're highlighting though the power of words and the importance of that. And it takes me back again to this play that I saw last night, where this Iranian lady told the story of her first day in the UK, and she didn't know a word of English, and how fearful she was being in this other culture. And so again, taking away that if we can communicate properly with each other, that can eradicate the fear.
Yeah.
And I think that's what this conversation has been about, hasn't it?
Yeah.
How can we eradicate the fear and come together?
Well, we can get everybody talking to each other, and we can get them sitting down and eating with each other. And there's the second part with the universal translator. When we've
Yes.
got that going,
Okay.
and we've spread that across the world. And here's a really fanciful thing, but I'm going to throw it in anyhow.
Let's go for it.
We just give the world a day off work. Everybody can have a day off work, and we have one huge global picnic where we all just go and sit down and share food and conversation. Using our Apple Air.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. We are kind of in a society. Let's move on back to society as well. I feel like we're in a society that does push that we're alive to work. And I don't think that that's what any of us are here to do. That I don't think that if we're going to go to God's purpose for us is to be just part of a system.
Well, that's why, you know, the rest, the Sabbath, the rest was so important. Even God rested, and God doesn't need to rest, but he did. And, you know, I was just thinking about Pentecost and everyone speaking in different languages, you know, like just need the Holy Spirit, don't need an app. But anyway, never mind. That's me. I think, that is really important. And I do really worry about that, you know, because I can remember as a kid on a Sunday thinking, this is really boring. But so I kind of get that. But I do think, seriously, we've lost something by making everybody work all the time and stupid hours. And I know myself, now, because it's, you can work from home, and that's a good thing, but it's also a bad thing, because how do you switch off? How do you stop?
And I have that problem myself, where I'm
Breathe.
fully self-employed, and I'm doing this full time now. And I enjoy it. That's another problem.
Yeah.
I enjoy it.
Yeah.
Most nights I'm working till like 1 o'clock, and then I work for 7 days straight, and then another week 7 days straight, and it's like this cycle that every now and then I have to force myself to go, I'm going to stop today.
Yeah.
I'm going to do nothing.
Turn the screens off.
Turn everything off for a moment.
Yeah. Don't do the doom scrolling.
But and that takes me back to when I was young as well. Those moments of boredom are actually quite good.
Yeah.
Like you say, when you went to church when you were young on a Sunday, and you was like, "What's the point in this?"
Yeah. Well, that wasn't even that. It was just the rest of Sunday, because no shops were open, and it was that thing of, there's nothing to do.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But actually, boredom. You're quite right. Boredom triggers creativity.
Yes.
Because
My best ideas come when I'm bored. My best ideas come when I go for a walk.
Yeah.
By myself, and all of a sudden they float past, and things start to work out. Well, this has been a wonderful conversation. I sometimes before I'm sitting down with people, I think, I wonder what I'm going to get from this.
Yeah.
But I had this feeling that I was gonna get a lot. It was both of you do so many important things within the place where we live, this community, this town called Harlow. That I'm sure if people see what you're doing, it's gonna resonate throughout the rest of the country, and resonate throughout the rest of the world. Even is my hope. I really do hope that to see more people doing the things that you two do. You're not just community champions, you're community heroes, and I really do appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, that's very kind of you to say so, but yeah, I think we both just take the view that we're doing what we should be doing, and
That's good.
and anybody's welcome to come and join us in doing it.
That's the thing, isn't it? Everyone doing a little bit of something good, and that spreads, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And,
It'll multiply.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity to chat. It's really
I've
great.
been looking forward to this all week.
Have
I've been all over the place this week. I mean, my week started in Liverpool. I was in London all day on Wednesday. I was on the south coast yesterday. But it's all week I've been talking about coming and doing this, because and I know you've been trying to pin me down for ages on a different thing. But
you've come along before, haven't you? You've both been big influences in my life. I do look up to both of you as well. Like I say, we connect over social media a lot of the time, but actually people moan about social media and say that it's such a bad thing. But actually, when I see the connection from the things that you're doing, I see the good in it. I see the good in that space, because you're doing good, and then that sometimes maybe may inspire me to be a little bit better.
Well, and I think this is great as well. The whole kind of what you're doing is really interesting, and really I think that's an inspiration too. And I think that's the thing. We just need to look for the good everywhere, don't we?
It's there.
There is a lot of it, and Harlow is a really good place. And, I know we all moan about all sorts of things, the roads and I don't know, everything else. There's lots to moan about. But actually, I do think there's something really special about this community, and we should, champion that and not let people hijack it. So, And I don't think they have, to be fair. I don't think a few flags is going to undermine the whole of what makes Harlow a good place to live.
No, but we have to make sure that people know it's going to be defended.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is it under attack? Yeah, that may be a strong term, but we have to get in there before anything more unpleasant occurs.
This has been wonderful.
Yeah,
I really do
enjoyed
appreciate
it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And if anyone has been watching or listening, we appreciate you for joining us for this conversation. Thank you.
Grand.
Thanks again, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.
you.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.